The time for convening having arrived. Excuse me. Time for convening having arrived. We'll start this evening's series of meetings. We'll start with our work session. The first item is the 2025 Capital Sidewalk Program update. Mr. Waters.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Bringing the update on the Capital Sidewalk Program to you this evening. There's two kind of asks we have within the update and within the presentation. But starting at a kind of a background on the Capital Sidewalk Program is it's based on these three funding categories that are on the first slide. Do I have the control or? All right. So there's three subcategories on the funding, and the kind of the biggest one is the priority scored list, and there's a draft priority scored list of sidewalk candidates in the back of this presentation. I won't read all of those. They're just there for you to review, and they'll be posted to the website. And we'll talk more about those next. Then there's the gap fill sidewalk program for projects under $50,000. So outside with the priority scored ranking, there's a cost estimate assigned to the candidate projects. And in the past, there have been some that are gap fills under $50,000, and they would get through council updates, we would recommend 3 or 4 of those at a time to get advanced higher. They would gain priority just because of their low cost. We haven't been able to execute a single project under $50,000 in a few years. So one of the last updates, we were asked by council to evaluate potentially increasing that limit, and that's the first ask here is if you all want to go with the recommendation of increasing the limit to $100,000 for the gap fill. Right now, when you look at the list, there's no sidewalk candidate project that's under $100,000. But they can be generated through development, through other projects, leaving smaller gaps. So it's new projects may be generated, or candidates, or somebody might, several years ago we undertook an effort with GIS to find smaller gaps in our inventory, and we found some of those that are 200 or 300 feet long, and we've kind of worked through most of those so far. So anyway, to have a chance at being part of that program, I think we looked at $75,000, and that's not really going to capture much more. So $100,000 seems like a good limit to consider. And we don't have to decide that now, but that's what we're going to recommend. That's also based on the funding right now. The second slide talks to we're advancing the sidewalk program with T-Splosh funding now and for several years in the past, and we haven't been using the gap fill program or the neighborhood program. I'll talk briefly about. I can go to it. So it's just the number 2 there. That there's 20 segments, about $12 million worth being advanced by T-Splosh 2021 right now. So, and then prior to that, we were advancing T-Splosh 2016, and we're still completing those. But those, in the past, we would get portions, we would get funding yearly within the budget cycle, and we would kind of rank them through these categories more historically. So even with the gap fill program, they tend to rank high anyway. So if you've got 12 million at a time, you're going to capture usually most of those lower value ones anyway. So the neighborhood program, it involves sidewalks that to be on the candidate scored list, you have to be on the Sidewalk Network Master Plan. And with the neighborhood program, even if the candidate is not on the Sidewalk Master Plan, the residents can petition, and by pledging 25% of the construction cost, they can we can bring that to council to see if that could be funded. But there's no funding for that right now, and nobody's ever filled out a petition for that program in the past to date. All right, so regarding the candidate scored list, that's kind of what the second main point for this evening is, that we've got a draft list, and for the purpose of creating a list that can be used for upcoming transportation master plan update that our traffic unit is going to be working through this calendar year, we're looking to have a good sidewalk candidate scored list to be able to provide to feed that master plan, showing priority segments that would be eligible for future funding in a ranked order. So that's kind of the purpose. Right now we don't have dedicated funding to this current list that we're looking at, but the purpose of it would be to go into that, feed the transportation master plan update. So right now, normally we wait until we have funding before we go out to citizens to ask them for letters of intent to donate right-of-way. And that's more about that on the next slide on details, but there's a 60-point scale, and 10 of the 60 is the right-of-way score, and that's the only place that citizens, the scoring is done by a committee within Public Works, and the citizens can help raise their score by getting a percentage of the people along the corridor to sign a non-binding intent to donate right-of-way letter. So if 6 out of 10 people along the corridor sign the letter, their score would go to a 6 for 60%, and if it was below that, that would increase their score. So if they can get higher than what their score was before, it would move them up. And there have been a couple of sidewalks funded in the past based on that being able to move up in the list. So we're looking to, it's a little bit unusual without funding directly in front of us to ask the residents to go to the trouble of signing these letters to donate. But that's to kind of get a set list for the Transportation Master Plan, which would then be in the next T-SPLOST list of projects. We would be looking for funding either through T-SPLOST or from future fiscal year budgeting. So there's a timeline there. So we're asking if there's consensus to move forward with reaching out to the public on this timeline to request letters of intent to donate right-of-way to help increase the score of their segments. And then we would take the list and update it and bring it back in July to finalize the list for the master plan. And then I've talked basically about these details of the right-of-way process, but this will be on the website for people to review. And then we'll also update the website directly with this information and send out social media, and communications will help us get the word out on this. And that's an example, the Windsor Parkway sidewalk. The citizens increased their right-of-way score, and they got funded in around 2015 is when they got, that list was set. And that's just a overview of the current scored segments on a graphic map. They've got numbers corresponding to what's in the table and some details on the kind of the inventory there. And then this is a kind of a refresher. We added through council action the density criteria to the scoring criteria last year, and that's included in these scores. And then the rest is the list, which shows the committee scores, the cost estimate of the segment over to the right, and then a running total. And there's 8 pages of those, so and it's 60, about almost 70 million worth of scored candidates, and that's percentage of the sidewalks. But these are based on citizen requests. Some of them are staff identified needs, but most of them are citizen requests from historically. So that's really what we have, and that, again, that'll be posted to the website for review. And so that's what we have for this evening, and open to any questions.
Ms. Rochelle.
2 questions. One, how do we send out the letters of intent? Do you actually mail them? I know you said you put them on social media and all that, but do we mail them? And the next thing is, when we do the draft scores, is it possible to put the district on there? I didn't see that on there.
We can, and actually the numbers to answer that first one, the numbers on the left, the ID, they start with the district, like 5 or 6. So
okay.
that's just so that.
Thank you. That's perfect.
That helped us. We added that a couple of years ago. And as far as the letters, what we asked it usually takes some sort of someone with the extra initiative or a champion for the neighborhood to come to us. We ask them to come to us and discuss the segment, and we lay out to them which parcels would need letters, and we would meet with them individually, with the person that's interested in gathering these letters. Anybody that's been successful so far had somebody that took it on, a citizen, and they went door to door with so it wouldn't be staff, it would be the neighborhood person that would go gather these. And so we would meet with that person, and then tell them, give them a map of addresses that we would need, either the letter or not, from to be able to add up the score.
Any other questions? Mr. Bauman.
Thank you, Wesley.
Sure.
And Jody, definitely the neighborhoods, we've had a lot of experience in District 6 with Lake Forest Drive, Dudley, where people get involved and they make it their big to-do, and it's been very successful. Couple questions. If you go back to the scoring criteria, Wesley, a question has been asked of me as to whether hazardous conditions, the danger of walking, is included in this scoring. And I guess the place where maybe it could be is evidence of pedestrian activity.
That's correct.
But if so, is a hazard? Is it also under the shoulder walkable or pedestrians compelled to walk in the roadway? Would you say that's where the question of hazard comes in?
It is, and we have a more detailed breakdown for our scoring committee, and that is exactly where we have those.
Chris, maybe we can provide that to the citizen who's asking about that. I agree with raising the gap fill.
Okay.
Just so we're not just doing it out of thin air, 100,000. Could you provide us, before we're asked to decide, or if we're even asked to decide, on sort of a candidate list of projects that's, what's been done?
Sure.
And what could then meet the qualifications, sort of at the 100,
right,
maybe 150 and $200,000 levels? Sure. That would be really interesting, because the gap fills are really important projects, for obvious reasons. And then the third question, so if you could do that, that would be helpful.
Sure.
And then the third question, just to confirm, we're still, and maybe this would be Ginger or Marty, Wesley, you, on new build houses that are in the master plan, sidewalk master plan. We are, as part of that permitting process, getting confirmation of right-of-way or the like
That's
for
correct.
future, is that right? That's
Yes.
still been effective to do that?
It is effective in that we've, just for example, we have a current project on Riverside Drive, south of 285, that has some right-of-way that was dedicated to us that we're going to use with the current project.
Okay.
We don't have to negotiate for it
Good.
right now. It's there.
Right, that was just as a reminder for this body and anybody listening in, that was sort of one of the things we did when we moved away from requiring individual homeowners to build sidewalk segments that could prove to be for years and years segments to nowhere or
Right.
unfairly expensive, to say that at a minimum they need to be turning over the right-of-way and the access. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Wesley. I got three quick things. One is this idea that the citizens can get property donated and to raise their score. You can get anywhere from up to 10 points,
That's
which really can kick you up the priority list. So I'm going to make sure I send this whole discussion out to my community just to refresh their memory, because there's a couple projects in District 1 that might help. Second is, and I may have missed it, there's a stretch of sidewalk on Nesbitt Ferry up near Coles Way.
Right.
Been on this list for a long time, and I couldn't find it on here. Maybe I missed it. I still want to make sure it didn't accidentally drop off.
I think it is on there.
Is it? Okay, then I must have missed it.
I'll double check, though.
Okay. And then finally, my third is, as we've talked many times here, we spend so much money on sidewalk projects. I'm always looking for alternative ways of doing this. I'm sure you guys are as well. A lady I worked with from years ago up in Pennsylvania sent me a description of a system she's got. It's a permeable paver system, and it has a crushed rock reservoir underneath it.
Right.
That, because it's pervious, water runs through it. There's a reservoir below. And so the question is, have you guys looked at pervious or permeable paver systems as a lower cost alternative, with the potential to maybe eliminate or minimize the stormwater management that we've got to do? Because half the time, the stormwater management is it costs more than the darn sidewalk.
Right.
So with that, I'm just asking.
Sure. We haven't directly. It's part, and as of probably about 2 years ago, through permitting with community development, they've instituted a green infrastructure feasibility checklist, and we kind of run through that, and that's kind of one of the tools in there, and it hasn't risen up as being required. So there's two ways to look at it: if it's required or if it's part of your original scope. So we haven't directly, because it usually gets on the linear projects, it gets seen as infeasible prior to costing. So what we could do is explore, and maybe with a couple of active projects, some cost estimate comparisons to kind of see how it comes out looking forward. So we could see, do a couple of case studies.
Okay, well, the whole idea is, if it's possible to reduce or eliminate the stormwater management, that saves a bunch of money, which makes these kinds of systems viable. And I've sent it off to Marty, and all I ask is you guys take a look at it.
Sure.
If it looks like it can benefit, then let's try to save some money here, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
Right. I was going to ask about that North River Drive gap, but I see it, and
Right.
I think it's the one that I was excited about, so
I think so.
glad y'all were able to incorporate it. I do have a question, though.
Okay.
So the North River Drive gap fill, we have a density score of 5. And if I'm comparing it to, let's say, the two projects on Adair Lane, which have density scores of 3.
Right.
And can you just remind me, like, what would constitute a 5 versus
Sure.
a 3? And you may not be able to be too specific. Let's see.
I can generally tell you it's based on zoning and distance from so there's in the presentation where we talked about adding density, there's a table, so I'd have to go back to that table, but it's based on zoning density
Gotcha.
and distance from the highest zoning distance in a certain radius around the segment.
Okay. I'd be interested in digging into that because, as it stands, Adair Lane has the largest multifamily
Right.
community in North Fulton sits on Adair Lane.
Yeah, and so there's kind of a couple of ways. There's the actual density of the adjacent property, and then there's the zoning density of what could potentially be done. So the choice during how to score them was geared toward zoning density. So we can double check it, but that may be what's kind of skewing what may seem intuitive is that the actual density may be higher near Adair Lane, but the potential zoning at North River may be higher. But we'll double check.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. Okay, thank you.
Any others? All right, Mr. Walters, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Moving to floodway text amendment. Ms. Sotal.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight we are here to try to gather consensus on whether or not to proceed with a text amendment to allow fences and minor accessory structures in future floodway conditions. To participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, FEMA requires us to regulate development and construction in accordance with the state's model ordinance for floodplain management and floodplain damage prevention, which we have adopted. There are only a couple of floodway encroachments allowed. They are for property access purposes and the installation of utilities. In recent months, staff has been asked if we could make exceptions for things like fences, play equipment, and the like. We have asked our state and federal partners if they could support such a request, and they have indicated yes, so long as we followed sound engineering practices, and the result was substantially similar to the text provided in the agenda memo that you have. So we respectfully desire guidance from Council whether or not to proceed.
All right, you've heard the Director of Community Development. She's asking for some input. Anybody? Mr. Paulson.
Hang on a second. There we go. Thank you. So I noticed the number 3 here, encroachments for fences having sufficient open area to permit free flow of water and debris. If you have no fence versus if you put a fence up, it's going to be less free than if there was no fence. So how do you look at defining sufficient open area? Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm going to let our floodplain manager answer the more technical questions.
I knew he was here for a reason. Perfect.
Mr. Paulson, Mayor, members of the council, not for good looks, thank you. And if my shine is too bright, just let me know. I'll get makeup.
You're good.
Sir, to answer your question, as you would see in that neighborhood, I'll take an example of Pine Forest. There are several homes that were built years and years and years ago that may have a split rail fence. And that's kind of the idea where we're going through. It provides enough flow that we don't have any obstructions. Now, if we do have, again, torrential rains and significant debris and tree just kind of falling through that river along Nancy Creek or any tributaries, the concern that we have, obviously, we might have some impact, but over a generalized storm, random storms, we're not going to have that problem. So try to provide some kind of security to a point for these homeowners, but still within the keeping good stewardship and sound engineering practice for the free flow of water as best we can manage it there.
Okay, I'd be interested in how this works out because, and I'm just thinking about this, if you have an open fence, then there's no security. Okay, the crook just crawls into the fence. Anyway, I'm not against this. I'd just be interested in examples of where you think this is a reasonable request and or not.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Another case in point, we could think about an equalization of hydraulic forces. Again, water's coming in. The gate has a hinge, if I may, and has the ability of, flipping in either direction to equalize that force so we don't have blockage or anything that's obstructing the flow. again, it's just engineers can come up with all kinds of ideas.
All right, Ms. Mueller.
So, question on, what is the architecture of such type fence, as an example?
That's why we depended more on the engineer to provide us kind of that study, that hydraulic versus, hydrology. Hydrology is the amount of water that falls on a property. Hydraulics is the force that it conveys through the project. So a split rail fence would have a lot more openings. Again, picture the X crossing on those split rails. Again, easier flow than you would have a privacy fence, dog-eared privacy fence. As I mentioned, kind of an equalizing gate feature. If there are some that are in the specific floodway, which is most and highest impact, maybe that feature would actually tilt and rotate. That way, again, it can equalize the flow of water when it comes downstream and then recedes. So, but again, we fall back on the engineer to come back and say, this is what would be sound practice. This is what, according to FEMA standards, this is at an elevation that would minimize flooding. And then from there, be able to determine whether it is, one, appropriate, and two, does and is compliant with sound engineering practice.
How many situations do we have like this, that we have homes that have significant portions of their would-be usable property in this type of area? Do we know?
Off the top of my head, I cannot tell you a number, but I know we are currently working through the RFP, as you all have heard about Nancy Creek and studying that area. Some preliminary numbers came back, and there's somewhere in there about 80 homes that are in that future conditions floodway area. I can't tell you it's going to be more than those. And a lot of those already are developed. A lot of those already have fencing that have been there for years and years and years. So we're talking about a very small number. But I can't give you an exact number.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Baumann.
All right, so just to clarify, we're talking about a floodway, not the 75-foot buffer, is that right?
Correct. This is just a floodway.
Okay, so to even be considered for this, you would have to be outside the 75-foot, is that right? Yes.
Correct. Now, in the 75-foot buffer, we do allow some fences, not in the undisturbed buffers. I mean, that's a little bit different.
Okay.
Remember, there's the three-stage buffer
But
from the creek.
we're not increasing encroachment into the buffer by virtue of this.
I don't believe so. No,
Okay.
sir.
And to the question that was asked, for a text amendment, let me ask you process-wise, this would go to Planning Commission, is that right, first?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then if it comes back to us, maybe put it on the public hearing, it would be what I would request, just so we could have people weigh in. But to some of the questions that were asked, it would be help to have, for visual learners like myself and others, maybe, to have some images of what this might look like. I mean, be helpful. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Well, one thing I'd be concerned about is whatever we do, we don't want to jeopardize our eligibility to be in the federal flood insurance program. We've got a lot of flood plain areas, and it's very important that that's the only source of insurance they can get. So we don't want to do anything that would jeopardize that. So as long as we're safely within those bounds, if we can help out, then we would. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the update for the final design for the old Riverside Park. Mr. Walker.
Evening, Mayor and Council. As the Mayor mentioned, I'm here to present the update for the Old Riverside Park project. Advance the slide. Just a little background. As all of you are aware, Lowe's Design was contracted to do the master plan work for that park property starting back in 2022. Did several public input meetings throughout that year, and then presented a master plan which was adopted in December 6th of 2022 by this body. They were then awarded a design contract to develop the construction documents, which are now nearing 100% completion and are being submitted for permitting to all the required agencies. Once that is complete, we will put it out to bid for construction. As shown in the master plan, the park is consistent with the master plan that was approved, with public access to river observation, a playground, green infrastructure, nature trails, and a restaurant facility while maintaining the passive nature of the site. The opinion of probable cost right now with the construction documents we have is just north of $6 million. There's currently just over 5.8 in the budget. Now that 5.8 is with the cost of the bathroom already expended. We've purchased the bathroom, which was around $200,000. So that the dollars available for construction will exclude that bathroom cost. So after we bid this out, we'll get a hard number from a contractor as to what that price will be, and certainly any shortfalls we'll bring to council with some recommendations on how to fund it or to value engineer the design to get it within budget. Aaron St. Pierre from Lowe's Design is here tonight to walk y'all through the master plan and to answer any questions along with myself that y'all may have.
Thank you, Brent. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Very excited to show you how your park has evolved over the last year. The image that you see on the screen is representative of essentially what's in the construction documents that are currently in for review with the permitting agencies. Like we showed in the original master plan, we are improving the entry drive going into the park site and landing at a paved parking lot. The road and the parking lot is all permeable paver systems in order to reduce some of the stormwater management impacts on the site. During this planning process, we did increase the number of parking stalls on the property. I believe we went from somewhere in the 20s to the mid-30s on the site. Going further into the site, what we did was we do have a small picnic area immediately off of the parking lot area that I'll show you an enlargement of. We also have a playground area that was increased by about another 2,000 square feet, and the restroom building that Brent was just talking about. The main heart of the project is actually what we call the restoration meadow. Those of you who are aware of the property, was once heavily developed for water and sewer facilities. And what we are doing is using the open pad to implement a new meadow with native plantings, butterfly gardens, and a hydraulic feature to help manage our stormwater on site while also providing educational opportunities and resources for the community who are visiting here. That lawn has a paved loop that goes around it that eventually leads over to some river overlooks. Those river overlooks are also tied onto the trail network, which ties back into some hiking trails that get back up on the higher levels of the topography. And also, we have another segment of the walking trail loop that is on the east side of the property as well. Some of the other minor changes that we did from the master plan was, y'all may recall, there were 2 bridge crossings going over the creek to the eastern part of the property. Through the design, we realized that it really wasn't necessary. We could make better resources of that money by consolidating down to 1 and having better control over the overall access of the site. There was also an outdoor classroom in one of the corners, a very nice bend in the creek on that eastern parcel. Right now, we pulled that out of the plans and are saving that as a footprint for future development. I think we just kind of want to get our heads wrapped around exactly how that space is going to be utilized in the future. So we'll continue to evaluate that as we go forward. This image is a blow-up of kind of like that little front entry area with the picnic area, the playground, and the restroom building. As you can see, we have multiple playground pieces. The playground itself is covered by shade sail structures, as well as the picnic area that I mentioned. These images, it's not Birkenstock, Brent. Bean and Stock. Okay, not the shoe company. It's the name of the playground company. And these are some images that we received from them of the pieces, the components that will be incorporated into the playground. So again, a lot of the park planning in here is really based around passive nature-based themes and approaches to design and engineering. And we thought that this was an excellent representation of that approach. The restroom building also has an architectural style that evokes that natural material, that natural use. This is a pre-engineered building, so you have issued a PO, and it is in fabrication and about to get put onto pallets in the next couple of months to be shipped and assembled on site after the award for construction has been issued. The restroom features 3 single-family restrooms, one of those being ADA. and is a very durable construction materials. We went through an extensive process with Parks and Recreation, making sure that this structure would meet the aesthetics but also stand the test of time. Currently, as Brent noted, the plans are in the process. They've either been submitted or are recently been submitted to the various permitting agencies. This is really where the timetable is totally dependent on our ongoing coordination with those permitting agencies in order to get everything done in a timely fashion. Our goal is to have the project fully approved and permitted by mid-May. And we will be giving you updates or providing that to Brent and Parks and Recreation as we go through the process to keep everyone abreast of the timeline on that. And that's it.
All right.
Any questions?
Questions? No. Ms. Mueller?
Can you refresh my memory? How many parking spaces will there be? Because I think that was the community, there's concern with that.
My eyes are not as good as they used to be.
34?
We're up to 34
Okay.
from 15.
All right, I couldn't read that. And then, what's the total number of miles of the trails? Like, so we have 2 trails broken up here. Do you know about
I think that it's a little bit over 2 total.
2 total?
It's pretty steep topography on both sides. There's ridges on both sides of that valley where the park sits. But yes, that was one of the challenges in the design, is how to get that natural surface trail kind of up to the elevations to get those overlooks of the
Okay.
river.
And then if you said it's fully approved and permitted by mid-May, when do we think we'll do shovel in the ground to actually start? Is that mid-May?
Well, we'll have to put it out on the street for bid. So
Okay.
once we get the permits in,
All right,
it'll take a
so-
month
so we still
to
have-
bid. And so probably later part of Q3, early Q4 will be under construction, mobilizing.
All right. Super excited to see this actually get going, so that's why I'm anxious about it.
Sure.
Ms. Rochelle, then Mr. Baumann.
Thank you. I'm very excited about this too. So the bathrooms, there's 3 bathrooms. Are they all unisex, or is there male, female, and 1 unisex?
Sure, it's 3 unisex compartments. So essentially single occupant, or what we call family restroom style.
Because that's different than what we have at most of our parks. Why did you decide to do the 3 unisex?
They can be signed however we want. They're all the same. There's no difference in each stall. So we could do a men's, a women's, and then a family restroom.
I mean,
If
I
that's
feel more comfortable with there's
Sure.
children and stuff like that. I just feel more comfortable if there's
Sure,
women's,
that's not a
men's.
problem. We can do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Baumann. All right, Dr. Kelly.
Sort of piggybacking on Councilwoman Rochelle's question, will the restrooms be equipped with changing stations?
Yes, they will.
Are our current restrooms in parks equipped with changing stations?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Is there a need to have any cyclist facilities out here? Or?
The park is not really designed for
Doesn't
cycling.
lend
The playground structure are even designed more for 2 to 5-year-old age children, and so we assume with that will come trikes and big wheels and all that kind of stuff to ride around the pollinator garden area, but it's not really designed for bicyclists.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it. Moving on to the last work session item, the implementation of property and sales tax reform by the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we're bringing a discussion to you about House Bill 581. You have likely heard some conversation about that over the last year. This was a bill, Lark, if you'd go to the next slide for me, please. This was as a result of a bill that was passed last year by the Georgia General Assembly, and it was contingent upon the passage of a constitutional amendment on November 5th, which would establish a floating homestead statewide. That constitutional amendment was approved, and the bill took effect on January 1st, 2025. Now local governments are tasked with determining, are you remaining opted in, or are you going to opt out? By the results of the the results of the constitutional amendment are that everyone in the state now is considered opted in unless they take action to vote to opt out. Let's go to the next slide, please. So House Bill 581 implemented, no, back one. Thank you. House Bill 581 implemented a statewide floating homestead exemption that is in place for all counties, cities, and school boards. Sandy Springs is unique, as you all know. We have actually had a floating homestead since 2007. So go to the next slide, please, Lark. Now what is happening with this bill is that the taxable value of the home would only increase at the rate of inflation each year. So to simplify that, because this is a very complicated calculation, is that will control the value of how much a home can increase each year for taxing purposes. And as I've mentioned, Sandy Springs has had a floating homestead exemption in place since 2007. This new homestead exemption is in addition to and not in lieu of existing homestead exemptions. It is very important to note these next two bullets. If there is an existing local floating homestead, the taxpayer will receive whichever of the two exemptions is more beneficial to the taxpayer. Because ours dates to 2007, our analysis shows that it is likely to be more beneficial to the taxpayer than the new statewide floating homestead. Because if you have owned your home in Sandy Springs for a number of years, you started out with your base at the year that our first floating homestead took effect, which is 2007. And your assessed value for taxing purposes has not been allowed to increase by more than 3% or the CPI, whichever was greater. The new statewide exemption would...
Whichever was lower.
I'm sorry. Yes. Go back forward, Lark. No, I'm sorry. Go back one. Thank you. So what is happening with this one, the new one that is being established by the state, is setting your base year at 2024 assessed values. Just by virtue of that simple explanation, it is more advantageous to remain with our existing one. So we are recommending that we remain opted in, which is going to ensure that the taxpayer will receive the most beneficial tax situation possible. Now go to the next slide. This bill also creates a new sales tax opportunity. The new sales tax is known as a floating local option sales tax, and it is contingent upon all eligible cities within the county remaining opted in. I stress remaining opted in and eligible because cities that have a MOST, which is municipal option sewer tax, are not eligible to participate in the floating local option sales tax. That means Atlanta, College Park, East Point, and Hapeville are not eligible to participate in those discussions. Go to the next slide, please. So if all of the eligible cities and the county remain opted in, we may choose to enter into discussions with the eligible cities and the counties to call for the floating local option sales tax. That intergovernmental agreement would specify the rate, the duration, which is not to exceed 5 years, and how those funds would be distributed between the counties and the eligible cities. As of right now, it is unclear if this would be beneficial to Sandy Springs because we are awaiting guidance from the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue on what the new floating local option sales tax would be for. If you are actually having to roll back your millage rate by what you are projecting to generate in the floating local option sales tax, it may not be beneficial for us to go forward with proceeding to do the FLOST. Next slide. One of the final things that we will need to take action on at the request of the Tax Commissioner's Office, there is a procedural change to the property tax now. It creates an estimated rollback rate which must be certified by the Tax Commissioner in each locality. The Tax Commissioner has requested that we have that certification submitted by March 1st, 2025. And the information calculating the estimated rollback rate is not going to be available from the Tax Commissioner's Office by this time. So what we would recommend to do at our next meeting is to bring forward a resolution certifying our rate at the millage rate set by the city charter as our not to exceed millage rate. We are also recommending we remain opted in and that we do not take any action to opt out. And I'm happy to answer any questions to the best that I can.
Well, there are a couple of bills down there. One would extend the deadline to the 31st, but that's not going to get done in time for this year. Secondly, the legislature's been a little disappointed in the number of governmental entities that have opted out, particularly school boards.
Yes.
And there's legislation, I don't think it's dropped yet, but expected this week, that would basically take away the option of optioning. You have to opt in. So there's a lot of moving parts on this 581 legislation. But right now, we've got to comply with the law as it is. And so this sounds like the most reasonable suggestion, because we're not going to know anything by the time we've got to file, because the tax assessor and the tax commissioner, they don't have the digest done, and so we don't know. There was discussion about moving the deadline back to the 1st of May, which would help a lot, but not totally, and then they decided that created some problems, so they're now settling on doing it by March 31st. Going to put a lot of stress on the tax commissioner's office to get all this data to the cities, not just in Fulton County, but this is statewide. So we'll have to figure this out in the next meeting, because we do have a hard deadline. I mean, we can't miss the deadline, or it's automatically we're opted in automatically without if you miss the deadline. So, any questions, Ms. Rochelle?
How does if Fulton County Schools does opt out, how does that affect us?
It doesn't.
Okay.
Schools it's independent of the floating local option sales tax conversation. I mean, as residents of Fulton County, obviously we would have an interest in whether or not the school board opts in or out, but what I've heard is that they are opting out. And I know City of Atlanta also has opted out.
And what does that mean when a school board opts out?
Basically, it means that they are not doing the floating homestead. They are using the traditional methods that has led to rising tax rates. In other words, it's basically the status quo as it is today.
But is that on their buildings or on their, what is that?
It's everything.
All of them?
It's not on their buildings, it's on houses and
No, I'm talking about the schools.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
It's not on the schools, it's
Right,
on,
it's on our house.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on our houses and
Got it,
other
got it.
real property.
Yeah.
Mr.
makes
Baumann.
sense.
Thank you. Is this an annual decision? The
No.
cities, so we make it
This
one.
is one and done. There will not be, unless they pass a new bill this year that would authorize you to go back and revisit. This is your one and only option to remain opted in or to opt out.
And just so I'm clear on this, I agree with the conclusion that you're offering. I think I do. Floating homestead exemptions aren't value. They're not addressing the value. They're an exemption that is used to get you to a tax amount. So the value will still be that's my question. I was a little confused on this presentation. Does this actually affect the value, or are they using the exemption process to cap your tax? Do you understand what I'm asking?
It reduces the amount of your assessed value that you pay taxes on.
So it actually reduces, because on our floating exemption, we don't touch the value. It's the exemption that is used to adjust your value is your value, right?
It still reduces
it. I'm going to say, well, no, but the value is what the value is.
Right.
And then the homestead, that's why some people, I hate to use these big numbers, but if somebody has $1 million home and then they have a net assessment of $400,000, they could, depending on what their base year was, they could see a multi-$100,000 exemption, and it's that floating exemption that starts to whittle down. That assessed value can keep going up and up,
Correct.
but then they get more floating exemption.
That's exactly
Is this any different? Is this
No.
okay? So this is going to still use the floating process to ultimately calculate your tax, but the county is going to still go ahead and figure out what your taxable value is, and then they're going to assess you at 40%, and then the float is
Correct.
going to be used to
Because
manage the tax.
What they are doing each year, the reason why ours is more beneficial is because it's older.
Right.
So the 2024 is going to establish your base assessed value as the current market value.
Yeah, except for there have been situations like if you've been assessed for that long, if there was a downturn, which there was in 08 or 09, you went down, and then it's a slow. The good news for taxpayers is that there's no cap on the amount it can go down, no limit.
Right.
We don't want the values to go down, but when they go down, they can go down to whatever, and then that climb up starts again. All right, I understand. Thank you.
Well, and this only applies to
The city portion
residential property.
and homesteaded.
It's homesteaded. So a rental property doesn't get it. It's only for those where you own your home.
And you reside in it.
You reside in it. And you don't get it doesn't apply to commercial real estate, doesn't apply to rental housing. So it's for homestead. And this basically, in a nutshell, takes the Sandy Springs way and applies it. They've taken our model and applied it statewide, which is a model that we've operated under since we started the city. And it's worked well for us. I mean, we've had no problems with revenue. And so I'm a big fan of it. So, anybody else? All right. Any other items to be brought before the work session?
Nope.
All right. We'll move to regular order. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sandy Springs City Council to order for Tuesday, February the 4th, 2025. Will the city clerk please make the announcements and call the roll?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. Individuals who would like to provide public comment at a city council meeting are required to complete and submit a public comment card in advance of these meetings. Those, public comment cards are available online and at the chamber entrance. Those providing public comment may be allotted up to 3 minutes to speak on their single chosen topic. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Rusty Paul.
Present.
Councilmember John Paulson. Councilmember Melody Kelly. Present. Councilmember Melissa Mueller.
Here.
Councilmember Jody Rochelle. Councilmember Tibby DiGiulio. Councilmember Andy Bauman.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, have we received any public comment cards?
Yes, we received one this evening. Mr. Bill Griffith.
Mr. Griffith, welcome.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I want to reference a comment I heard last month during the School of Lights hearing that caught my attention. It was about the importance of protecting our neighborhoods. That's why I'm here, to try to protect my neighborhood from speeding drivers on the approximate 1 mile stretch of Roberts Drive from near Roswell Road to the far side of a sharp curve approximately 3/10 of a mile east of the 400 overpass. Last month, I read from some emails I had sent to various then officials of the city, one of which was in December of 2006 and one was in September of 2008. In those two emails, I described 4 accidents on the aforementioned stretch of road. However, I didn't describe the other heard from inside my house accident referenced in that 2008 email. Maybe the following is that accident. In January of 2007, an eastbound car failed to make the curve near my house, destroyed my neighbor's mailbox, went completely off the road, and left broken off car parts scattered well into their front yard. If a pedestrian had been near that mailbox, it would have been bad. As a result of the above referenced 2008 email, several of the then officials of the city met with some concerned neighbors in October of 2008 about the speeding issue on Roberts Drive. As a result of that meeting, the city installed 4 radar-activated flashing speed signs, 2 of which were along the above-referenced stretch of road. One was about 3/10 of a mile away. I don't recall exactly when those signs were installed. However, it may have been within a year or 2 after that 2008 meeting. I'm uncertain as to whether any of the following 4 accidents happened before the installation of those flashing signs. Nevertheless, I want to describe them now. 2 separate at-the-scene accidents happened at the aforementioned sharp curve. They were crossover accidents. Eastbound cars didn't make the curve and ended up well into the woods beyond the curve. Not knowing whether anyone was in either of those cars, I was apprehensive as I approached those cars, wondering whether someone was inside. Both of those cars may have been totaled. An oncoming car would have been in trouble. This next accident happened when a westbound vehicle didn't make the long curve on Roberts Drive that begins for westbound traffic about 125 yards east of the 400 overpass. and about 0.2 of a mile west of the aforementioned sharp curve. The vehicle mangled the chevron sign on the shoulder about 100 feet from the bridge. If a pedestrian had been near that sign, it would have been bad. I've now described 8 single-car accidents, one of which was fatal, on the above referenced stretch of Roberts Drive, all of which were due to speeding. I don't have time now to describe that 4th accident. I'll do that next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffith. See you in a couple of weeks. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. DiGiulio.
I move approval of the meeting agenda for Tuesday, February 4th, 2025.
Motion by Mr. DiGiulio. Is there a second? Motion by Mr. DiGiulio, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve the meeting agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the approval of the meeting agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The meeting agenda is approved. Moving to the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve the consent agenda for February 4th.
Motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on approval of the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent agenda is approved. Moving to public hearings, will the clerk please read the first item?
This is agenda item number 2025-032, ABL number 111272. Consideration of approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Mexico Lindo Sandy Springs LLC, located at 7870 Roswell Road, Sandy Springs, Georgia, 30350. The applicant is Oscar J. Lopez Gonzalez for consumption on the premises of wine, malt, and distilled spirits. This is presented by Revenue Supervisor Tammy Edwards.
Ms. Edwards. I believe this may be your first appearance, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, good. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Council. This is an application for change of ownership for consumption on the premises. Mexico Lindo Sandy Springs LLC, 7870 Roswell Road, Sandy Springs, Georgia, 30350. The applicant, Oscar J. Lopez Gonzalez, has met the requirements, and the staff recommends approval.
All right. Any public comment cards?
It's me.
Dr. Kelly's. All right. We'll close the public hearing. You've heard the report of the Revenue Supervisor. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Dr. Kelly.
I'll move approval of agenda item 2025-032, approval of an alcoholic beverage license application for Mexico Lindo Sandy Springs LLC, located at 7870 Roswell Road, Sandy Springs, Georgia.
Got a motion by Dr. Kelly. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Dr. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Paulson, that we approve agenda item 2025-032, an alcoholic beverage license application for Mexico Lindo Sandy Springs LLC at 7870 Roswell Road, Sandy Springs. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Dr. Kelly.
Okay. I actually have questions. I know you probably want to make a statement, but I have questions about just alcohol licenses in general. This question came to me from a constituent. These have to be renewed annually, right? At a cost to the owners? Is that how it works, or?
They do the renewals annually, and they do go through background checks annually.
Quick question about the renewal. What's the late fee? How much is it, if there is one?
It's if they do not renew by November the 15th, between November the 15th and December the 15th, there's a 10% late fee. After December the 15th, it is a new application process.
Okay, so then that would be, that's not a flat rate. That would depend on, or, oh, okay, all right.
Whatever the tax is, whatever the tax amount is, 2% is on that.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. That helps.
Mr. Hill?
I was just going to say that I was there a couple weeks ago, and it was packed, and everybody was having a great time, and the food was really good.
Same
So everybody
here.
should go.
Yeah, I was there a couple weeks ago on a Sunday. So good. Yeah.
I tell you what, don't show up on a Friday night looking, just walk into a restaurant in this town. They're all full. It's up on the north end.
Where
on
Tijuana
Roswell
Joe's
Road.
was? Where Tijuana
It's right
Joe's
next
was?
door to the old location
Old City
at
Hall.
7840 Roswell
Tijuana
Road.
Joe's. Yeah. All right, any others? All right. Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2025-032, approval of the alcoholic beverage license application for Mexico Lindo, Sandy Springs, Georgia, at 7870 Roswell Road. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ms. Edwards, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, clerk, please read the next item.
Agenda
New
item-
business.
Agenda item number 2025-033. This is consideration of a resolution to approve a contract award to Atkins Realis USA, Inc. for construction, engineering, and inspection services for the City of Sandy Springs portion of the Path 400 multi-use trail extension project, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract. This is presented by Public Works Director Marty Martin.
Mr. Martin.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Tonight I bring before you a recommendation to award a contract to Atkins Realis, also known as Atkins North America, for construction, engineering, and inspection support to the Path 400 project. As you may recollect, we advertised for bid and Mayor and Council approved for award on May 21st of 2024, the award of the construction contract in the amount of some $20,150,900 and change. The contractor was given notice to proceed on January 6, 2025, with a project construction duration of 3 years for the project. Additionally, the project construction is being partially funded with federal funds, an 80-20 match in this particular case, and as such is subject to additional requirements to include the compliance with Brooks Act for procurement. The additional construction inspection support will be needed to ensure that the project is completed successfully and in accordance with Federal Highway Administration regulations. To the end of awarding this CEI contract, the city advertised its request for qualifications on June 19, 2024, following GDOT procurement policy, and issued a multi-phase advertisement. Phase 1, statement of qualifications, were due on July 26, 2024. Staff received qualification statements from 3 consultants at that time and scored those on a quality-based criterion. Based on the qualification review, each of the 3 consultants were then invited to submit Phase 2 technical approaches, commencing on August 26, 24, and closed on September 16, 2024. The following are the 3 consultants who submitted proposals: Atkins Realis, Atlas Technical Consultants, and BCC Engineering, doing business as Heath and Lineback. Those consultants were scored by an evaluation committee of staff: Alan Johnson, T-SPLOS Program Manager; John Daniels, T-SPLOS Construction Manager; Maggie Grant, CIP Project Manager; and Coseo, CIP Project Manager. Within the 2 phases of evaluation, first Phase 1, key personnel, project manager, etc., plus additional resources and challenges. And then Phase 2, the technical approach, specific qualifications to approach the work, and past performance were the elements of contract evaluated among the proposals. All scores considered across both phases. Atkins Realis scored the highest at a score of 775 out of the available points, Atlas second at 575 points, and BCC Engineering third at 525 points. Based upon the review and scoring by staff, staff then commenced with the next part of the process, which was the negotiations with the highest scored successful consultant in this case. The current negotiated fee arrived to via negotiations with that highest scored consultant is $1,489,000 to support the 3-year construction duration for the project. With that, staff recommends award of the CEI contract for Path 400 to Atkins Realis in the amount of $1,489,000.
You've heard the report of the Public Works Director. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
I move adoption of agenda item 2025-033, request for approval of the contract to Atkins Realis USA for construction engineering inspection services for our Path 400 multi-use trail extension project.
We have a motion by Mr. Baumann. Is there a second? Motion by Mr. Baumann, seconded by Ms. Rochelle, that we approve agenda item 2025-033, a contract award to Atkins Realis USA for construction, engineering, and inspection services for the City of Sandy Springs portion of the Path 400 multi-use trail extension project. Any discussion?
Mayor Paul.
Mr. Baumann.
So, Marty, thank you for this report. I mean, that's a pretty big gap in qualifications, I think, here. You all, I mean, we see sometimes these things are really, really close. I think you all feel very strongly about Atkins in this case.
Especially considering the resumes, I had the opportunity to have worked with at least one of the names on the Atkins proposed team before while they were in the employ of GDOT several years ago, and they assisted us very well at the time in navigating through a disadvantaged business enterprise issue we had at the time, and they gave us very good guidance that was a little complicated. So we knew some of the names, and the resumes said that we were getting a good team in this case.
This is for inspection, basically inspection engineering services, is that right? I mean,
That's correct.
So
Yes.
that, in other words, quality control, going according to plan, is that, can you explain that a little further?
Absolutely. So first, there's the compliance with plans and standards that is important to this, and that all of the inspection staff here demonstrated that strong experience in their resumes. Along with that, especially on construction, we'll meet several other compliance hurdles. Among those, for instance, contractor compliance with Davis-Bacon wage rates. You have to document it. You have to interview correctly, et cetera. You have to meet the inspection guidelines for that. They'll orchestrate, with the work of another consultant, materials testing and certification as a part of the project. Also a fairly rigorous requirement for all Federal Highway Administration projects. We've got inspection standards there that must be captured by a material testing consultant and then documented so that it satisfies the needs of GDOT and FHWA for audit, et cetera. So, and then as well, there's compliance with the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, which again has its own special set of rules and compliance standards that one member in particular on the team demonstrated a pretty strong experience on that, which is another place where we've needed help before.
I mean, these are professional services, and understanding we're at 20% of the, our shares are 20%.
Yes, sir. Correct.
And at $1.5 million, I mean, is this work priced as an hourly estimate? Typically?
This is for the duration of the, and not all of this is.
A lot of time.
It's a long time, across a span of 3 years, with a varying amount of time based on the skill sets required. For instance, that compliance specialist, for instance, with DBE programs, not a full-time presence on the job. We're going to need a monthly overview of key reports that go along with that. Whereas lead inspector, we want them out there every day, and augmented with one of our staff as well to ensure we've got coverage on the project throughout the duration.
All right, thank you.
Mr. DiGiulio.
Marty, you've been using kinds of names that I'm not familiar with. What is a disadvantaged business enterprise? Is that something that these people, I mean, it sounds to me like it's a bureaucratic nightmare.
It's not. It's fairly clear-cut. Within programs administered, federal programs administered by the Georgia Department of Transportation and across FHWA, there are classes of companies that get a competitive status, and you're required to include participation from those companies on construction projects. So in this particular case, this Federal Highway Administration funded project had a requirement of X%. I believe the number was somewhere around 10%, maybe off on that a little bit. It was required of DBE participating subcontractors in this particular work. So there's a standard form and format you use to measure their progress and their billing against the project and ensure that they're enrolled in the program, that they are in fact qualified to be in the program and meet certain inspection criteria across it. We've done it with other projects in the past. Just with the magnitude of this project, we felt the extra help was needed here to support us on that.
Mr. Martin, I think some of the definition of those would include things like minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned
Yes, sir.
businesses.
Correct.
So there's a whole category of businesses that qualify in that, and they're required by the Federal Highway Administration based on an act of Congress that we have to follow to be able to do this. We do this on all federal projects. This one,
And half for years.
yeah, half for years. Now this one, this may be the most important contract we approved besides the contractor themselves. Some of you will recall a few years ago where we had to return some money to the State Department of Transportation because the contractors that we were using, they didn't follow all the rules. They didn't do the record keeping. They didn't comply with all this, and it cost the city money. Now, ultimately, we were reimbursed by the entity for that, but we don't want to go through that. And this contract will ensure we're in compliance, and that doesn't happen again.
They do, yes. Sir.
Yep. There's a whole laundry list of things that have to be checked the box. So this will keep us out of trouble, hopefully. Anybody else? Ms. Rochelle.
I keep bringing this up every time we talk about the path, is the future construction, that gap. Is that the only gap between?
So we have an area called Segment 2, one gap that's still unfunded. We're in very active discussion with the Atlanta Regional Commission and the Georgia Department of Transportation about potential funding sources to assist us in funding that remaining gap in construction. No final decisions from them yet, but let me assure you that we're not waiting right now. We're in active discussion with them right now as we seek funds. Say again, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2025-033, approving a contract award to Atkins Realis USA for construction, engineering, and inspection services for the City of Sandy Springs portion of the Path 400 multi-use trail extension. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2025-034. This is consideration of a resolution to approve the North Springs MARTA Corridor LCI plan presented by Planning and Zoning Manager Michelle McIntosh Ross.
Ms. McIntosh Ross.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. This plan was presented at the December 17th, 2024 Mayor and City Council work session, and it was also presented at the Planning Commission work session on December 18th of 2024, and it is attached into your packet. There were no changes in the recommendations since this was presented at the work session. Just background, as you may know, the city was awarded a Livable Centers Initiative grant from the Atlanta Regional Commission, ARC, to conduct the transportation planning study for the Peachtree-Dunwoody Road from Abernathy to Spalding Drive, and to include a transit-oriented development, TOD, study for the North Springs MARTA station. The city collaborated with MARTA, the Atlanta Regional Commission, Perimeter CID, and worked with the professional services firms of Nelson, Nygaard, Perkins & Wills, and also subs. In March of 2024, we initiated the North Springs MARTA Corridor LCI plan and worked throughout the year, engaging with the public through 2 public open houses, 2 series of pop-up events at the MARTA stations, 3 online surveys, focus group meetings, and stakeholder discussions with MARTA riders, residents, and North Springs high school students. The feedback gathered informed the recommendations of the corridor and the MARTA site. The city's Next 10 comprehensive plan prioritizes appropriate higher density transit-oriented growth around MARTA stations and identifies North Springs MARTA station as a future transit-oriented development site. The Next 10 and the Transportation Master Plan identified the Peachtree-Dunwoody Road to be transformed into a pedestrian-friendly multimodal urban boulevard and greenway. We have maintained consistency with the goals of the Next 10 and the Transportation Master Plan for the station site and the corridor in this plan. This plan does not make any recommendations for rezoning changes, and it doesn't make any recommendations to change residential properties within the protected neighborhood character area. The plan provides an urban design concept and action plan with policies and programs meant to meet the vision and the goals identified within, and to guide the development of the MARTA site and the alignment of Peachtree Dunwoody Road. We highlighted at the work session the final surveys that we did showed favorable reviews for all of the recommendations within the plan. And as I mentioned, the plan was presented at the December 17th work session and at the Planning Commission work session on December 18th. And I'm here with a resolution for your consideration to approve the North Springs MARTA Corridor Livable Centers Initiative Plan. And approval of this resolution will allow the plan to be designated as a Livable Centers Initiative, LCI area, which would make it eligible to tap into additional sources of funding for various projects through the Atlanta Regional Commission. Staff recommends approval.
All right, you've heard the report of the Planning and Zoning Manager. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Powell.
Ms. Rochelle.
I move that we approve agenda item 2025-034, a resolution to approve the North Springs MARTA Corridor LCI plan.
Motion by Ms. Rochelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Rochelle, seconded by Ms. Mueller, that we approve the North Springs MARTA Corridor LCI plan. Any discussion? Ms. Rochelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so a couple questions. We can do one project without doing the other, right? So
That is correct.
Okay.
You mean the MARTA site versus the corridor project,
Right.
correct?
Because the MARTA site is probably years away, is my understanding. Because
it is years away.
I know the representative was here. How does that work? Like when because I looked on their website and they already have 3 stations. And by the way, I went to Lindbergh and it was pretty impressive. I mean, they do a great job. But how do they decide? And do they just call us and say, hey, this is, we're going to start this project?
Yeah, they will let us know. But usually they have a planning department as well that would look at the stations in the system and prioritize those that they would want to move forward with a TOD, transit-oriented development. But there's also another route where developers may approach MARTA for particular sites, and that way it may be developed on a schedule that wasn't already in their schedule in the planning.
But as of right now, it's not on the drawing
It's not
board.
on their schedule,
Okay.
yes.
But we can move forward. We're going to move forward with the others. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Ms. Mueller.
Michelle, will the corridor be a new upcoming T-Splost project? Is that kind of what we're envisioning? Or
It can
to
be.
do that?
Yes, I see nods, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say, so it's down the road. It's not like imminent, like this year or next year, probably.
No, I don't think it will be next year. But
Okay.
and also, that being an LCI area, you can tap into all this other transportation funding that comes with that they give
Okay.
to LCI designated communities.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2025-034, approving the North Springs MARTA Corridor LCI plan. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. The clerk will please read the next item.
Agenda item number 2025-035. This is consideration of a resolution to approve a contract award with the Georgia Environmental Protection Division of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources for the FY23 Section 319H non-point source implementation grant, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Presented by Director of Recreation and Parks, Brent Walker.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. City staff and our design team, Atkins Realis, has been developing the construction documents for the Abernathy South Greenway over the past several months. It includes strategies to improve the stream corridor health through bioretention, stream bank stabilization, and in-stream structures while offering a park experience for our residents. As part of the funding for the development of the site, the city was approved to receive a 319H non-point source implementation grant in the amount of $400,000 from the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. We're asking the mayor and council to approve the contract to receive these grant funds. As part of that discussion, John Boudreau of Atkins Realis is here this evening to present the design and answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, my name is John Boudreau. I work with Atkins. I'm the project manager for the Abernathy Greenway South Side project. We began the master planning process in mid-2022 with Mr. Perry at the time. Went through a master plan that lasted about a year-long process. We were then looked at improving both the trail as well as providing green infrastructure and stream enhancements for the area between Long Acres and just east of Wright Road. As you can see in the concept here, we're proposed to improve the existing trail. Currently the trail is gravel, and as you may know, the trail is washed out pretty significantly in a number of areas. There's approximately 8 drainage structures that discharge into the greenway. The Abernathy Road is about 20 feet higher than the stream elevation, and those culverts the water leaves the culverts and finds its way to the stream. Because of the significant grade change and the amount of water that comes off the road, significant erosion has occurred on the site. In addition to the trail itself, several areas along the greenway have eroded. The soil is washing into the creek itself and has compromised the stream channel. We've done a flood study, analysis of the existing stream, and pre-condition as well as post-condition with all the proposed improvements. We feel the improvements will make the stream a healthier stream, as well as to minimize the erosion that's occurring on the site. In addition to the trail improvements, we've also, as you can see in the existing graphic here, we've proposed a number of BMP practices, which include the rain gardens, a number of rain gardens, catch basin inlet filters along Abernathy Road, and then several hundred feet of stream mitigation. Again, the proposed improvements are from east of Long Acres all the way to east of Wright Road. Again, the proposed improvements the drawings have been completed. We've finished the construction documents for the proposed improvements. We're currently working with Fulton County on the relocation of existing sanitary sewer line that is located within the stream bank. We've had several coordination calls with them. We've completed the sanitary sewer relocation plans and are in the process of submitting those formally through Fulton County. We are also we've also completed the stream buffer variance process as well as the Army Corps of Engineers permit. Both of those permits have been completed for this project. This graphic here just basically highlights again the proposed improvements. The area between Long Acres and just east of Wright Road will be bid if the city decides to move forward. The plans, as I said, have been completed. The permitting process is anticipated to be completed in May of this year. After we go through a bid process and notification, we anticipate about a year's construction to complete the proposed improvements. The proposed improvements are roughly about $4 million between the base and the bid alternate. We've broken out the bid alternate to obviously to protect the city, so there'll be some improvements if depending on the number of contractors that bid the plans, the city can still accept the bid and decide to move forward with the bid alternate between Wright Road and the east limits of the property. Again, this just summarizes the permitting schedule. We've started that process with Fulton County. The plans have been submitted, or will be submitted, excuse me, to Fulton County. And then we've also set up our land disturbance meetings with the city of Sandy Springs to review the plans. Hydrology reports have been completed, as well as the wall plans and erosion control plans have all been completed, and as stated, the state stream buffer and the Army Corps nationwide permit have both been approved. As part of this process, we worked with Mr. Perry and the Sustainability Director to apply for the EPA grant, the 319 grant. You were awarded that grant and for $400,000 to help implement the proposed improvements that just reviewed. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, you've heard the report of the Director of Recreation and Parks and our consultant. What's the desire of council?
Mayor Paul.
Ms. Mueller.
I move that we approve agenda item 2025-035 for a resolution to approve a contract with the Georgia Environmental Protection Division of the Department of Natural Resources for the full year, or is that fiscal year?
Fiscal year.
Fiscal year 23, section 319, sub H, non-point source implementation grant, and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract.
We have a motion by Ms. Mueller. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Mueller, seconded by Dr. Kelly, that we approve agenda item 2025-035, a contract with the Georgia EPD for the 319 non-point source implementation grant. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Ms. Mueller and then Mr. Paulson.
Did we have to purchase any stream bank credits for this project like we have for other ones?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
We're restoring the stream here, so.
Okay, so we don't have to purchase when we
No, ma'am.
do a restoration. All right, thank you.
Mr. Paulson.
Thank you. Thank you. A quick question. Fulton County is responsible for relocating 1,000 feet of sanitary line here from the stream bank. When they relocate the pipe and they go back and dress up the area where the pipe used to be, are they going to dress the final area to be consistent with the plans you guys already have?
We've prepared the plans. I think the cost, who actually is going to pay for the sewer line relocation is still in process. From our earlier discussions with the county, they were going to discuss that amongst themselves. So any pressure that you could bring to that, I'm sure would be.
Well, our ability to pressure Fulton County to do partner anything is hard.
I understand.
But if they're going to go in there and tear the area up, removing the pipe and replacing it, they should at least grade the area that they leave behind, consistent with our drawings. Hopefully we can press that upon
Mr.
them.
Paulson, I think what they're suggesting is if we pay Fulton County to move their sewer line, then they will comply with our plans. And that's kind of what they're suggesting will probably be suggested to us, yes.
I was just going to say as well, we're going to have follow-up meetings with Fulton County
Right.
and the discussion of the sewer line itself, whether that would be incorporated with the overall Greenway plans.
Okay.
And it could be done by the contractor that is also doing the Greenway.
That's a great
Greenway
idea.
improvements.
So we're not even in the sewer business as
I know.
a city.
I know. But
Okay.
I think what the county's position would be, our sewer line is perfectly fine where it is. If you want it moved, pay for it.
Okay, so they don't have to do this. They're not compelled to do this with or without us.
Yeah, and part of the issue is the existing sewer line is right in the bed of the creek. And it's a 60-year-old line. In some areas has less than a foot of cover over the existing pipe. It's a clay pipe. And
It's a clay pipe.
It's a clay pipe. It services roughly about 10 houses that are up on Long Acres. And I think it's in everybody's best interest to address the sewer line
Right.
prior to construction.
There'll be a point of negotiation. Ms. Rochelle.
So are we doing this project, spending $4 million just because so people can run on that trail?
No,
Or would we be doing it without, like if we just put a bunch of plants down there, would we still have to spend the $4 million?
yeah, I mean, probably the biggest improvements, the cost of is really the stormwater mitigation measures that are being done to kind of stabilize the site. If you go out there now, there's significant erosion that's occurring, so it's even more than just the trail itself. It's all the water quality measures that at the rain gardens, the additional planting that's going to be done along the north part of the trail between the high part of Abernathy Road and the trail where all the water is coming off the slope. We're going to put in pretty much a rock swale, a French drain along the trail to catch all that water, so it prevents the trail from continually washing out.
But I mean, if we just put a bunch of plants out there, I mean, you can run along Abernathy, because I've run that
Yeah.
every single day almost, and I hardly ever see anybody down here. So I'm just curious. I mean, it seems like a lot of money, $4 million to spend on just that short amount of trail.
Yeah, I think to John's point, the trail is kind of a secondary component to what we're trying to accomplish through the stormwater mitigation efforts. It's more of a stream bank stabilization project with a trail along it, but I think the focus really is trying to mitigate that erosion and improve the storm water quality.
So if there wasn't a trail, we'd still have to do this?
At some measure, yes.
And I would just add that the $400,000 grant is part of that $4 million. So the city's contribution is the 3.5 or 3.6.
Okay. I mean, I'd be curious to know how much it would cost if we didn't worry about the trail. I don't know if anybody else is open to that, but that just seems like a lot of money to spend on, how long is the trail?
It's several thousand feet.
I mean, it'd be different if you couldn't run along Abernathy Road.
Yeah, and again, we'd be happy to share the costs with you. The bulk of the cost is in the stormwater mitigation measures that are being addressed, as well as the reconstruction of the stream. If you were to go out and look at the stream itself, in some areas, there's less than a foot of bank. So a lot of the flooding in the stream, when there is a good rain event, is coming out of the stream bank and is flooding the greenway, basically. So what we've done is we've kind of gone in, did an assessment of the existing stream, see where the problem areas are on the stream, and then kind of redesigned the stream, opening it up to address the flooding. And then just not just grade it back. There's, rock that's going to be brought in, plant material that's going to be brought in. So there's the bulk of the cost is really to address the stream bank and the stormwater measures. And then obviously redo the trail, because the trail is kind of washed out over the whole, the greenway area.
Okay. Well, I'd be curious to know the numbers if we weren't worried about the trail.
Ms. Mueller.
So maybe this is for Brent. We've been talking about this since how long?
Since before I got here.
Okay. So we've had this presented to us multiple times. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
And we're in this situation because my understanding is that when we focused on the North Greenway, right, which is a beautiful park, well used, we really didn't give the attention and care in the planning and design, which since we didn't do that, I'm not sure that we did the maintenance as well. And so now we're in a situation where it's very deteriorated if you've ever walked there after a storm.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I would just say in 2007, I did the master plan for both sides of Abernathy Park. We also prepared the construction drawings for the north side. We did that project back in early 2000. We had hoped that at that time that we could also address the south side. There was some of these issues were present then, and there was an interim improvements that were made. And I think, unfortunately, some of the improvements didn't really address the stormwater coming off of Abernathy Road, the amount of volume that comes off of the road, and it's kind of deteriorated over time. So we're hopeful that we can move forward with these improvements to stabilize the area and to make it just as accessible and beautiful as the north side.
There, Paul.
Mr. Bellman.
I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
And there is a significant amount of water that comes down off of Abernathy. Is that not correct? And it's just washing in. I mean, I have videos from walking there afterwards. So this is not just about run. It's about the usability of the area, as well as, probably more importantly, is properly addressing the stormwater flow
That's
that
correct.
we get off of the road. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bellman.
So, thank you. Good questions. What assurances do you offer that the functionality of this project will be as promised when we're done with it, in terms of, because I've been down there too with the water. Are we feeling pretty confident that we're not going to be back in another 3, 5, 7 years doing another large water mitigation project? I mean, are we leaving anything sort of out of this that we should be doing, or how confident are we of the success of
managing first and foremost the water?
Well, I think we are addressing the water issue properly, the way it should be addressed, through a number of measures, as I've indicated, through managing the outlet controls that are coming off of the Abernathy Road, putting those into rain gardens. We're taking out the sediment that's coming off the road so it doesn't get down to the creek. And then we've also looked at the existing hydrology of the creek and then made design recommendations to better have that water maintained within the existing stream bank. So there will be maintenance. I mean, with anything like at your house, obviously you make improvements to your house. You have to, your landscape outside, there's still going to be maintenance issues that you're going to have to address over time in these existing rain gardens that have been proposed. But we think it's a considerable effort that we're making to improve the overall quality of the area.
Well, so do I, and I think what we're not a city with an overabundance of green space, including for what I would consider pretty passive use. I would suggest some of the lower usage right now has to do with the condition of it, because I remember when we opened it, there was pretty good use. Now, I don't live over there, but I think we are keeping a promise to the community that we have been making for many years, that this would be an integral part of the Abernathy corridor for the many, many residents that live over in that area. And I think the project looks great. Everything's expensive. I know that. I'm glad we're getting a grant, but I intend to keep this promise.
Yeah, this is a project that the adjoining neighborhood has been, we had a lot of conversations with them, and it's very important to them for the water issue as much as for the recreational part of it. The water is polluting the stream and creating problems downstream. So we've got to be able to control this. When we did the north side of Abernathy, it really came down to how much money we had left over to do the south side. We didn't have the money to do it, so I don't want to say we cut corners or it was an afterthought. That would be an inaccurate description. But we didn't put in the thinking and the resources into that. It was more just kind of, let's get that done, and then if we need to come back later, we'll come back later, and now it's later. So,
clarify that I don't disagree with this project. I'm there all the time, but I'm just saying that is a short stretch. And if it's a difference between like 1 million and 4 million, I would just be curious about that, like putting green space. I don't see a lot of people over there, and I also run over there, like I said, almost every day, and I haven't seen a lot of storm issues. I've been able to run fine. So, but I'm not saying that I don't agree with the project and that there is an issue. Just trying to figure out about the short trail.
Right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on agenda item 2025-035, a resolution approving a contract with the Georgia Environmental Protection Division of the Department of Natural Resources for the FY23 Section 319H non-point source implementation grant. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The item is approved. That brings us to the end of the calendar and to the mayor and council reports. A couple of things. One, I know several of our members attended the Cities United conference this past weekend with the Georgia Municipal Association. It's always worthwhile. I know several of you took classes, which is good, to learn more about city operations. I was involved in 3 different events. One was I'm on the board of directors. I'm also on the Legislative Policy Council. And this year I'm chairing the Transportation Policy Council. We had 3 good meetings and things. I think it was a very successful meeting, culminating on Monday morning when all the city officials came to the Capitol, and we all went out and started talking to our legislators about the issues that are on our minds. And it was an opportunity to reinforce with our legislative delegation, some of the issues we talked to them about during the luncheon that we had with them prior to the session. And they remembered that conversation. So it was good to have that, just reinforce some of the challenges that we face and get their attention. Also, through the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I had an opportunity to meet with the FIFA, the football, the soccer group. You know, we have the World Cup coming in 2023, and we have the hospitality board, Visit Sandy Springs, is working diligently to get them to use our facilities. This is just one step below the Olympics. They're coming in 2026, but they're actually coming in 2025 because there's two phases of the tournament. One is the club championship, which will be this summer. In fact, I just got my tickets to the Chelsea-Lyon match at Mercedes-Benz. I have a son-in-law who's a soccer coach, and I'm giving those to him for a birthday present. But it's a real opportunity to expose this facility particularly to a global business community, because there'll be a lot of business people here. It's much akin, if you go to the Braves stadium on a baseball night, you've got a lot of people in the stadium, but you got almost as many people outside the stadium. They expect as many. We have 8 matches in 2026 in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They expect over 200,000 people to be in Metro Atlanta for each of those games. Once the session starts, we'll have an opportunity. We won't know until December of 2025 who the matches are going to be, so that we can start marketing this to the corporate community. But I have Bill Haggett and also Adam Barrios, who's our new Visit Sandy Springs Executive Director, working together to develop a plan to bring the consulate community into this facility so that they get familiar with it, so that when they suddenly get deluged with 6 months' notice before the first match, and they're looking for facilities to hold corporate events, that this facility will be top of mind. So we have a marketing plan that is in the process of being developed. The club championship is all the professional clubs, the Premier League, the Liga, the Spanish League, the German League. They have their club championship. Basically, it'll be the fans of those teams that'll be here. But still an opportunity for us to showcase this to a global audience. So we're working on that. We'll be talking a little bit more about that as we get a little bit closer. That's something we've been working on really for almost a year, since we knew that the World Cup was coming. We've had a planning group at Visit Sandy Springs getting ready to make sure our hotels are prepared for it, and that we have an opportunity to build this facility into the planning as well. So more will be coming. That's it for me. Anybody else? Mr. Baumann.
Thank you. Good update on the soccer. I do have a question, Mayor. In terms of the discussions with our legislators, and in particular GMA, are they thinking about, I don't know if they've adopted their 25 agenda, but a recurring theme here has been short-term rentals and party houses. What conversations have you had, and are they having at the GMA? I mean, I'd like to see them stick up for our needs. Well, are they adopting a policy on short-term rentals?
We've been at GMA this past summer during the policy procedures. We've had a standing policy for several years supporting our position on managing party houses. The challenge we have is that the Georgia General Assembly still has a large number of, well, I don't say rural, but there are a large number of rural legislators who don't perceive our problems the way we perceive them. And they're very strong property rights people. They believe that if it's your house, you can rent it to anybody you want to, and that the local governments shouldn't be involved in regulating that process. And so we've had a real problem. In fact, in the last 2 sessions, there have been bills to take away our ability to regulate short-term rentals.
And I want to, and listen, I understand that. It's the same problem with GMA. GMA is a collection of 539 cities with, I guess, 539 votes. Our vote is the same as a city with a population of 275. Is that right?
Roughly. It's not quite that clear cut. Each policy council member, or like transportation, the people who show up vote.
Well, I just do hope that, look, we do have to deal with the reality of a large state, and I know you know this, and the rural aspect, but there are issues that come up. We know in October, November, and December, bow hunting comes up. and that throughout the year, particularly when we get into the warmer months, rental houses come up, that our role in GMA, and I enjoy going to GMA, is to make sure that we, of course, advocate for our issues. And I just, I'm not in the room and just want to emphasize as much as possible. There's some other issues too, but, GMA, I appreciate the work that they do, but there are times I feel like that that there are issues related to the metro area that are not being fairly represented in the outcome of the policy. And I don't want to go too depth of that, but I do take issue with some of the policies that are in GMA, and that's life in the big city, right? You put up the fight, but we do need to put up the fight. And if the weight of the council needs to be put behind some of these issues, count me in. We need to. We need to flex whatever weight we might have on these issues. It's great to get along and go along, but these issues are front of mind. I have two other quick things. First of all,
well, let me respond to that last
go
one.
ahead.
A lot of the participation is self-initiated. You just got to show up. If you got something that you want to bring to the
So you don't have to be on the council?
You can volunteer to be on any of the committees. That's how I got there.
Okay.
So all you got to do is show up.
Good to know.
With the LPC, Legislative Policy Council, which I've been on for about several years, we take up, basically GMA doesn't look at issues that are unique to us. They take on issues that are global. That's the role of an association. They leave it up to us to advocate for our policies. For example, you talked about bow hunting. I've had conversations with Lynn Smith on a number of occasions, and there's just no There's no
but we can fight for that
in being able to give us that ability, because they don't want 539 plus another 159 different policies governing these things.
No, but GMA takes positions on a lot of issues, and that's good to know. I thought you had to be on the council, but that's good to know.
Yeah.
And I would definitely intend to do it. I mean, I have some issues with the public safety policy and some others as well, but GMA does good work, and I appreciate their work and appreciate your service down there. This Saturday is a great program. It's Art Beat. The Sandy Springs Art Foundation brings in several hundred students from our middle schools and our high schools to perform in choir, band, I think, concert, musical instruments, dance, display arts, and this also doubles as a fundraiser through the Sandy Springs Arts Foundation, where money is raised and goes directly to the schools. I know many of us are planning to go. Many of us have contributed. I think most of us have contributed. I do look forward. I know they would have applied. The Arts Foundation was going to apply to our nonprofit program that we had hoped to have rolled out. I think it was originally, these things have been rolled out in the fall, and then it got later and later, and for whatever reason it's been pushed back, and we're actually still in the open application period. And several of us last year encouraged them to apply, but they've missed the deadline. And in that, we've missed an opportunity, the city, to attach our name to a program that's going to bring hundreds and hundreds of families into our facility. We absolutely should. We charge them rent, and it's like any rental project, like any rental here. But of course, it's not just any rental. It's a free program to all of us in the community, and many who don't come into this facility. And I hope we can find a way to this and other programs to attach our name and be meaningful partners. We talk about strategic partners. I forget what the words we use. Presenting partners, and I think we have an opportunity, maybe a missed opportunity. When we first built this facility, before we first built this facility, there were four of us up here. Councilman Paulson, DeGiulio, Mayor Paul, you and I can distinctly remember sitting around tables with Ken Dishman from District 2 and Graham McDonald and Gabe Sterling, and having conversations that to do this beautiful facility, it's really got to be open to the public and especially to our schools, and it is, but I think we have more opportunity. And I hope in our upcoming retreat and in our upcoming policy decisions, we've had this conversation about City Springs Theater Company and some others, that we have a very robust conversation about our partnership programs and how to really get the most out of them for some great opportunities that we and the community and the city have in doing that. So I'd throw that out there. And the last thing is between now and our next meeting, there's going to be a public hearing for Spalding Drive Elementary School, and I know other council members have been, everybody's been doing their part, and I think that's great. I think the citizens that have been involved in that effort, right now we're down 4-3 as I understand it, but we have to flip a vote, and I know that Councilwoman Kelly and Jody and all of us, I've seen John at meetings, Mayor, you've had meetings, we got to flip one more vote to save Spalding Drive, and that community deserves it, and they've done an amazing job, but there is another public hearing, I think the 11th, so a week from tonight at the North Fulton Annex, and I know a lot of you all have done public speaking, so I know we're all in their corners. I just want to mention that as a big, big issue that's coming up in the next week or two. Thank you, Mayor.
Anybody else? Ms. Mueller.
So as you mentioned that Dr. Kelly and I, we did attend the Georgia Municipal Association meeting and attended economic development, and then together we attended municipal law. So Mr. Lee, I don't know if that might mean we can help. I don't know. But I joined Dr. Kelly with, I've now achieved my certificate of recognition. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I walked into the municipal law thing, and they had a big slide up on the gratuities clause, and I thought of Dan Lee. First thing that popped in my mind. All right, we need an executive session for the purpose of real estate and litigation. Mr. Paulson.
Mayor Paul, I move that we suspend regular order, move into executive session for the purposes of real estate and litigation.
Have a motion by Mr. Paulson. Is there a second? Motion by Mr. Paulson, seconded by Mr. DiGiulio, that we suspend regular order, move into the executive session for the purposes of real estate litigation. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the executive session. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are in executive session. There'll be no further business conducted this evening. We'll simply return to regular order and immediately adjourn. Thank you. All right. Mr. Paulson moves that we close the executive session and return to regular order. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. DiGiulio. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. The question's on the return to regular order. All in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed, no.
Mr. Mayor, I move adjournment.
Mr. DiGiulio moves adjournment. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Paulson. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned.
Breakfast is served, I heard. That's good. Yeah, I'm fixing breakfast.